and welcome. My name is Kristen Henry. I'm going to attempt to be your hostess with the mostess tonight. Hopefully you've grabbed a glass of champagne, you've grabbed a couple of canapes and you've settled in. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Ngunnawal people and pay my respect to elders, both past and present. On behalf of Country of Canberra, on behalf of PwC, hello and welcome. Tonight is, I guess, a little bit about high-fiving ourselves and celebrating what it is to be a woman, what is power, what is success. You are about to meet some beautiful women tonight. We've all had a little bit of a champagne, a little bit of a canapé together and got together and said, what do we want out of tonight? And what we want is that you get in your car or get in your Uber after your couple of glasses of champagne and you're driving responsibly, thanks very much, and you feel inspired. We want to be able to stoke a fire in you. We want you to be able to lay your heads on the pillow tonight and think, God, I loved those women and I took something away from tonight. When we talk about strong women, in the Australian landscape, when we talk about a woman who is absolutely a mover and a shaker, when we think of a beautiful woman who is making sure that regional communities are getting the, I guess, attention and the spotlight that they deserve, we absolutely think of our Minister for Regional Development and Senator, the Honourable Fiona Nash. Please put your hands together for her.
Thank you, Kristen, very much for that very kind introduction. And Hannah, to you, you are just a superstar, I have to say. When I first met you, I think like everybody else, just absolutely struck by your capability and your tenacity and your drive and what you do. So congratulations to you for everything you do. And I'm so glad I can't stay longer. Jennifer, Holly, I think we've got Stephanie as well, Rosanne. I'm really sorry I can't be here with you as well for the panel. We've got, we're still going crazy up at the house and I had to sort of sneak some leave to get down here, so here I am, but I'm really sad I missed the champagne. Anyone? Look, I'm just delighted that Hannah asked me to come down and just talk about pathways to power. And when I started thinking about it, the thing that really strikes me is that there isn't a clear one for any person. Some pathways for people are obvious and they know where they're going to go and they set their course and they chart their way and they get there. Other people, it sort of evolves and you evolve from one thing to another, and then all of a sudden you look back and think, well, that was my pathway. And I think I probably fall in the second category rather than the first. I'd always had an interest in politics. I'd grown up in a household where we'd talk about the world around the table at dinner time and those sort of things. And went off to university, got completely distracted, forgot about politics for a while, partied a lot. But I never sort of lost my interest, I suppose, in things that were going on around me in the world and in our country. So my pathway is sort of a little odd, and as I say, it's sort of just developed. So we farm out at between Young and Cowra and been out there since 1991, and it was a couple of years after that. My boys at that stage, Will was 2, Henry was only a baby. And I'd spent a fair few nights sitting around late night, 3 o'clock in the morning, drinking red wine, complaining about things. And I thought, well, if I'm going to complain about things, I should get off my tail and actually do something and not just complain. So I joined the local branch of the National Party. And as happens when you join the local branch of the National Party, they make you secretary straight away, pretty much. And I was for many years very involved in the organisational side of the National Party. So I went on from doing that to being on the State Council and the State Executive. And I really enjoyed that. I'm much more a backroom person than I am a front room person. I'm actually not very good with people. And it was really interesting being part of the back room and doing those sort of things for the party and not necessarily being in the limelight. Along the way, sort of would have been about 1999, and I'm condensing all this down into a very short story, about 1999, and we'd been on the farm, we'd had years of drought, and like so many farming families, we needed off-farm income. And I thought, what am I going to do? At that stage, the boys were 7 and 5, and long story short, we lived 2 hours from Canberra, and I came over to work for a minister as a receptionist. And that, which was great, was terrific. It did the job of earning some money, but it meant I had to be in Canberra Monday to Friday, and my husband's parents lived here at that point in time, so I stayed with them. So for a couple of years, I was only home on weekends with my boys, and that was really tough. That was really tough. But as I often say, you know, women, particularly rural women, I think, even though I grew up in Sydney till I was 16, you just do it. You just do it. Rural women are just so resilient, and I think women actually across the board are pretty resilient, and probably a lot more resilient than they often give themselves the credit for being. So I did that, went on to run for the Senate, was pre-selected in 2004 and went into the Senate in 2005. Which is kind of interesting because at that stage there weren't very many women in the party room, in the political party of the National Party. We've got a lot of women in the organisational side, but not very many in the political party, and still don't. Working on it, anyone? Working on it. But so went into a party, and I remember one of the very early days, and I was with one of my colleagues, and they were introducing me to a fellow National Party person, and they introduced me. I was the New South Wales Senator for the National Party, and this bloke just looked at me and said, "But you're not a bloke and you're not wearing a hat." I thought, well, there's your typical National Party stereotype, better crack that one open. And so I just really rolled with it, I think, when I got into the Nats. Clearly I wasn't your usual standard type of National Party person. There are a lot of blokes in the National Party, but they're good guys. They're really good guys, and I never really felt that I was held back because I was a woman in a predominantly male political party. I was fortunate enough along the way to gain in opposition. I was the Shadow Minister for Water Resources and Conservation for 8 weeks until I crossed the floor and Malcolm sacked me. But anyway, here we are. But, you know, that's the price you pay. If you cross the floor, if you're on the front bench, you know the consequences. I knew the consequences, and I made my decision on that particular issue. But I was fortunate enough then, when we got into government in 2013, to take up the position as it was Assistant Minister for Regional Health, went on to Minister for Rural Health, and now am the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories and Regional Communications, which is terrific. They kind of all blend in together, which is great. And then, of course, last February I was able to take on the role. My colleagues had enough faith in me to elect me as Deputy Leader of the National Party, which was pretty cool because we'd never actually had a female leader or deputy leader of the party before. And that's something I take as a real responsibility. And there's a lot of responsibility I place on myself to get it right. And I remember thinking before I decided to actually run for the deputy leader role, it was a few weeks before, and I was sort of going, oh God, you know, all the boys are going to run, I haven't got a chance. And I sat down and I said to myself, gave myself a whack, and said, what does it say to every other woman that wants to aspire to something if I'm not prepared to have a go?
That's right.
And I thought, well, if I run and I lose, well, you know, so what? I've had a red hot crack. Mm. If I don't run, I've failed. And so I ran for the position, and I was successful. And what was really interesting as I look back now, as I went through my strategy of what I was going to do, I'd say keep it in the room, but I don't think it's going to happen. But I thought, I've actually got to be really low key. And you often think when you're running for things, you've got to be out there front and centre, you've got to be shown to be leading the way, you've got to have all the media all over you. But I think one of the greatest lessons out of that for me is you don't necessarily have to take the most obvious route to get somewhere. That often there's a way around to get somewhere that might not look obvious, but is the way to go. And it wasn't until about 5 o'clock the afternoon of the vote that the media actually realised that I was serious, and that most of my colleagues actually knew I was going to run. And by that stage, because it was something that I just quietly and methodically went along and was able to talk to my colleagues about why I thought I'd be the best candidate for the role of deputy leader. I suppose they took the time to listen, and I was very fortunate in getting there in the end. So here now, I did have a period of time where I was the only woman in the National Party room after Kay Hull retired and Deanne Kelly unfortunately lost her seat, but we've got fabulous Bridget McKenzie and Michelle Landry now, and they are just sensational, absolutely sensational. Michelle Landry is the first woman ever to hold the seat of Capricornia for 2 consecutive terms for the coalition. She's the first person ever to do that. And, we don't hear much about it. And to me, I think that is absolutely extraordinary. She is just a dynamo, and Bridget's just tremendous. But just in finishing up, I suppose the thing that really strikes me about women is when there's a position available, and women will be thinking, this is a gross generalisation, but it's pretty close to the mark, I think. When women are thinking about running for a particular position, they might have a woman preparing to run and a fellow thinking about it. The woman will go, I'm not good enough. Have I got enough talent? Do I have those skills? Have I got the qualifications? What if I'm not any good at it? No, I probably shouldn't run. The bloke who'll be as third as much qualified will go, I can do that. Easy. Yeah. And I think it's getting women to be in the mindset of that they can do things, that, just back yourself, have the confidence. And with everything that women do, we should always think there is no failure in losing ever. The only failure is in never having had a go. And I always say to people, if you can wake up the next morning after a pre-selection or something you've run for and be okay with yourself, have a red hot crack. The only thing you don't want to do is wake up the next day and think, did I do everything I possibly could have? I didn't. That's what you don't want to do. You just want to have absolutely every box ticked, try everything you possibly can. Then if you don't get up, so what? Go off and do something else. But at least you know that you've tried and you've backed yourself and you've given yourself every opportunity to be a shining star. So Hannah, thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm just really disappointed I can't stay, but hopefully next time you do this you might ask me again when it's not quite so busy. So thank you all very much and have a fantastic night.